Good morning, everyone. Um, Today we're going to be talking about disruptive impulse control and conduct disorders. So this is a population you might work with in schools, with children. You might experience this in community settings and the criminal justice system. So these are important diagnoses to learn about. And I'm sharing with you now. We'll start from the beginning. All right. So disruptive impulse control and conduct disorders are conditions involving problems in the self-control of emotions and behaviors that violate the rights of others. So this could be aggression, destruction of property, and or that bring the individual into significant conflict with societal norms and authority members, which is why I mentioned the possibility of the criminal justice system. Some of the disorders that we're going to be covering in this chapter include oppositional defiant disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, conduct disorder, antisocial personality disorder, pyromania, kleptomania, and other specified and unspecified disruptive impulse control and conduct disorders. So the DSM does a pretty good job of going in developmental order. So we're going to kind of start young and get older here. All right, oppositional defiant disorder is a pattern of irritable mood, argumentative, defiant behavior, or vindictiveness lasting at least 6 months, as evidenced by at least 4 symptoms from any of the following categories, and exhibited during interaction with at least one individual who is not a sibling. So I guess they're okay with all of these behaviors being directed toward a sibling. But I think that what it highlights there is that they're comfortable expressing these behaviors with people who are outside of their family, which, kind of shows the level of defiance that they're feeling and experiencing. And I've got allergies here, so bear with me. Got my MSU cup here. All right. So angry, irritable mood. So remember, we're looking for 6 months, at least 4. And out of the following categories, there's 15 categories. Often loses temper, is often easily annoyed, is often angry and resentful, often argues with authority figures or adults, often actively defies or refuses to comply with requests from authority figures or rules, often deliberately annoys others, often blames others for his or her mistakes or behavior. They're vindictive, and they've been spiteful or vindictive at least twice in the past months. Causes distress for others, not caused by another mental disorder, and you want to specify mild, moderate, or severe. So you're going to see a lot of oppositional defiant disorder, particularly when you're working with kids. I would say it's a very common disorder that you see, and sometimes it's interchangeable with or diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. So what you really want to rule out is, let's get to differential diagnosis. So you want to rule out ADHD. And so basically the person is defiant in situations that do not require sustained effort or sitting still. That's one thing you want to kind of take into consideration. If it's just related to focusing on tasks or sitting still, ADHD might be a better diagnosis for someone. And then you want to rule out conduct disorder. So conduct disorder is a little more severe, and it includes aggression toward people, animals, or a pattern of theft and deceit. So if you're looking at ODD, it's really focused on anger and irritability, but it's not violent. They may be defying authority or not following rules, but they're not hurting animals or lying or being deceitful regularly. You want to rule out depressive and bipolar disorder. So this behavior does not occur during the course of a mood disorder. And you want to rule out disruptive mood disorder, which is similar in chronic negative mood and temper. The frequency and severity are more severe for people with disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. And you want to rule out intermittent explosive disorder. So that's serious aggression with others. That's not part of the definition of ODD. So what is intermittent explosive disorder, you might ask? Well, I'm going to tell you. Lucky you. Okay, so intermittent explosive disorder includes outbursts and failure to control aggressive impulses as manifested by verbal aggression or physical aggression to property, animals, or other individuals 2 times per week for about 3 months with no physical injury or destruction of property. Or 2, but 3 behavioral outbursts in a 12-month period that includes damage of property or physical assault. So you're going to look at the time that these behaviors are occurring and the severity. So with ODD, it's kind of just a constant disregard for authority, anger, irritability. This is more, every once in a while they're acting out. 2 times per week with no physical injury or destruction of property, just verbal or physical aggression. And then 3 behavioral outbursts in a 12-month period that includes, it's more severe, includes damage of property or it's physical assault where someone's injured. So the aggressiveness is out of proportion to the stressor or provocation. So it's not like someone occasionally getting in a fight because they're defending themselves or someone in their family, where you would imagine that the stressor is on level with the provocation. Their reaction is clearly out of proportion to the stressor. The outbursts are not premeditated, so it really is an anger disorder. And the recurrent aggressive outbursts cause personal distress, financial or legal consequences, or problems with functioning. So they're getting in trouble for this. They're struggling to manage their lives because of this anger. They need to be at least 6 years old, and this is not better explained by another mental disorder, medical condition, or substance. This diagnosis can be used in addition to ADHD, autism spectrum, ODD, conduct disorder, etc., when the criteria fits. Okay, let's talk about conduct disorder. Conduct disorder is usually considered kind of the precursor to antisocial personality disorder. And antisocial personality disorder is what we think of when we think about our murderers or killers, what you would consider a psychopath. So someone who truly does not have empathy or remorse or a respect for the rights of others. But conduct disorder happens at a younger age. So antisocial personality disorder is when they're adults and it's a consistent pattern of behavior. Conduct disorder happens at a younger age, and this is a repeated pattern of behavior that violates the rights of others, or major societal norms or rules are violated by the presence of 3 or more, 3 of the following criteria in the past 12 months from any of the categories below, with at least 1 criterion present for 6 months. So over the course of a year, at least 3 of these criteria are met, and at least 1 is present in the past 6 months. Aggression to people and animals. So they bully, threaten, or intimidate others, initiates physical fights, has used a weapon that causes harm to others, or that could cause harm to others, has been physically cruel to people, has been physically cruel to animals, has stolen while confronting a victim, has forced someone into sexual activity, has destroyed property, so has deliberately engaged in fire setting with intentions of causing damage, has deliberately destroyed others' property other than fire setting. Under the deceitfulness and theft category, has broken into homes or cars, lies and cons others to get what they want, has stolen things of non-trivial value without confronting victim. So they are verbally aggressive with others and don't have a problem hurting other people, but they're also stealing behind people's backs. There's also serious violation of rules. So they stay out at night despite rules beginning before age 13. has run away twice or once for an extended period, and is often truant starting before age 13. So you're going to specify with limited prosocial emotions like a lack of remorse or guilt. And that means that they don't feel bad or guilty for the behaviors they're engaging in, or callous. So that lack of empathy. So you're either going to specify with a lack of remorse or guilt, or with callous, a lack of empathy, so they don't care about hurting other people, or maybe both. So as I mentioned before, conduct disorder is kind of like the juvenile version of antisocial personality disorder, but you do want to be careful to notice that sometimes people act out at various stages of development, and it does not turn into a personality disorder or a lifelong affliction. So sometimes people can turn things around. Sometimes even the criminal justice system can be a good deterrent. But for the people who have chosen this life and they're kind of moving in that direction and it becomes ingrained in their personality, antisocial personality disorder is a pervasive pattern of disregard or violation of the rights of others occurring since age 18, as indicated by 3 or more of the following: a failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors, as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. Deceitfulness, as indicated by lying, the use of aliases, or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. Impulsivity, or failure to plan ahead. Irritability and aggressiveness, as indicated by fighting and assault. Reckless disregard for the safety of self or others. Consistent irresponsibility, as indicated by repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor financial obligations. A lack of remorse, as indicated by being indifferent to or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. The individual must be at least 18. So for literally any personality disorder, you can't diagnose a personality disorder before the person is 18 years old, because it's not a personality disorder. They haven't had time for that to develop yet. They have to be an adult. And C, there was evidence of conduct disorder with onset before age 15. So, you're looking at that conduct disorder diagnosis. And the antisocial behavior is not exclusively during the course of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. I will note that bipolar disorder can look like this on a lot of levels. So, recklessness, irresponsibility, lack of remorse, at least in the manic phase. They typically show remorse during the depressive phase. And failure to conform. A lot of this can really look like bipolar disorder. But you have to understand bipolar disorder has those different phases. And usually the person ends up in a down phase and then has remorse for all these things. Okay. And then with schizophrenia, there are different motivations behind behaving in some of these ways. Maybe they have voices that are telling them to do that, or they're having delusions that make them fearful, that make them engage in this type of behavior. This is really more of an ingrained personality trait, ingrained personality traits, lack of remorse for hurting other people. And there's really no empathy, or kind of moral consciousness in this type of a person. Let's talk pyromania. Yay, it's fun. No, it's not. Okay, so pyromania is a deliberate and purposeful fire setting on more than one occasion. There's tension or affective arousal before the act. There's a fascination with, interest in, curiosity about, or attraction to fire and its situational context. So paraphernalia, uses, and consequences. There's pleasure, gratification, or relief when setting fires or when witnessing or participating in the aftermath. The fire setting is not done for monetary gain as an expression of socio-political ideology, to conceal criminal activity, to express anger or vengeance, or to improve one's living circumstances in response to a delusion or a hallucination, or as a result of impaired judgment like dementia, intellectual issues, or substance intoxication. So the fire setting is not better accounted for by conduct disorder, a manic episode, or antisocial personality disorders. This is a very distinct category unto itself. It's usually going to be a repeated pattern of behavior. You're also going to look at normal development and expression. So if someone engages in this behavior once and they're kind of a dumb kid who just doesn't really know, they didn't think the consequences through and they're going along with the crowd or something, that's going to be different. This is really like a pattern of behavior you're looking for. And so, yeah, which is mentioned on the differential diagnosis section. So other causes of intentional fire setting, it may occur for profit, sabotage, revenge, political statement, to conceal a crime, terrorism, protest, to attract attention and be the hero, and developmental experimentation, as I just mentioned. So there might be other purposes besides just setting the fire that you want to consider before giving this diagnosis. And other mental disorders. So pyromania is not diagnosed when fire setting is a part of another diagnosis like conduct disorder, a manic episode, or antisocial personality disorder. Unless it's prominent. So let's say that you can still be you can have two diagnoses. So if this stands out and they meet the criteria on their own, you can still give them this diagnosis. It's just if it's better accounted for by another diagnosis, you want to go with that. Kleptomania is a recurrent failure to resist impulses to steal objects that are not needed for personal use or their monetary value. There's an increasing sense of tension immediately before committing the theft. There's a pleasure, gratification, or relief at the time of committing the theft. And the stealing is not committed to express anger or vengeance and is not in response to a delusion or a hallucination. And the stealing is not better accounted for by conduct disorder, a manic episode, or antisocial personality disorder. So kleptomania I've heard described as almost a compulsion, like similar to OCD. So it's usually like, it's not out of financial need. It's not because you're engaged in a manic episode and you're engaging in reckless behavior. It's almost like a compulsion to do this. So differential diagnosis would be ordinary theft. That's kind of what we talked about. Like sometimes people steal because they need things, or they're stealing for the sake of stealing, but it's not like a compulsion or something that would warrant an actual diagnosis. They may be malingering, so doing it to get attention or, out of a deceit. Antisocial personality disorder would, kind of encompass the whole set of behaviors or the personality. And so if it's a part of antisocial personality disorder, you wouldn't necessarily want to address it unless it was really prominent and kind of stood out on its own. And of course, manic episodes, psychotic episodes, and major neurocognitive disorder. Other unspecified disruptive impulse control and conduct disorder and unspecified, go ahead and look in the DSM, but what both of these categories mean is maybe they have some characteristics of some of these disorders that we just discussed, but they don't quite fit the full criteria. So what you're going to do in that situation is, look in the DSM. If they don't completely fit the criteria, you may want to use other or unspecified. And that's all I have for you today. I'm going to stop the share. Okay, I hope you learned a little bit about, these conduct disorders and impulse control disorders and how they might impact you as a clinician. All right, hope you have a good day. Next is substance use disorders.